Greetings, one and all. Welcome back to Dave's Dungeon. I am your host, as always, the one, the only, Dungeon Master Dave. Sorry, this episode's a little delayed. I accidentally ran in with Shel Silverstein. And, as he said, fell off the side of the sidewalk and off the edge of the world. Accidentally tripped while taking out my garbage, and the sidewalk's flat on one side and off the other. It's like a grading hill that goes down feet as it goes, and it was piled up from the entrance to the compactor all the way out, so went to step off and didn't realize, oops, a little steep there. So had to spend a few days laid up, had to delay some things and push some stuff around. So I appreciate y'all for being understanding and, being patient with me having to delay some things. I am okay. I'm more sore than anything. My lower back and my knees and my legs, my feet, because I landed kind of square with a bunch of garbage on me. But I'll survive. I just needed to lay up for a little while, and hence why the episode was a little delayed. But tonight, we are covering Warlock and Warlock the Armageddon, part of our Magical Frights Night double features. You might find both or even all three of the Warlock movies on Tubi. They are also available for rent or purchase on Amazon, and they're pretty cheap, which is why I recommend you go ahead and buy them. These movies don't get a lot of love, and they deserve it comparatively to some other ones. But before we get off into this, let's talk about the awards. I want to go ahead and do both movies. So for Warlock 1, we have a director, Stephen Miner, who is, yes, that Stephen Miner that worked with Cunningham on Friday the 13th, Part 1, 2, and 3. He even, I believe, directed 2 and 3, if I'm not mistaken. If he didn't, he was the principal photographer, either way. And then, for Warlock 1, we have a writer, David Twohy. And yes, that David Twohy. Riddick, yes, that David Twohy. He's done so much work. So, it's a little interesting to know that he's responsible for this. Then our actors MVPs, we have Richard E. Grant and Julian Sands and Laurie Singer, which I gotta say is just, it's amazing how stacked this cast actually is, because there's actually a point later where you're going to find out that this is one of Rob Paulsen's movies, too. Narf! Yeah, that Rob Paulsen. I'll point him out when we get there. But then, for Warlock 2, we have director Anthony Hickok, writer Kevin Rock, and MVPs for Julian Sands, and really Julian Sands only. I don't think anybody else in this movie, maybe a few people did a few other things, but for the most part, it was rather underwhelming of a film. And you can even see that in the box office. This movie barely made back its budget. But that was better than the first film, which did not by any measure. So, let's get off into this. We begin with the squad marching off into what amounts to a jail cell in the middle of Boston, year 1691. Julian is hung up like a... I don't know what you'd hang up, but he's hung up in the middle of the room like a kid. You wouldn't want to touch anything. And the room is filled with breakable things. And Julian, don't look at me like that. Especially not while you're hanging there, stuck in the middle of the room like that. I'm not your stepbro, bro. Get away from me. So we find out the Warlock is set to be executed, aka Julian Sands. And again, I'm going to try to keep that clear because he doesn't have a name. He's never really named in the series. And you're just going to have to know he's the Warlock. But he's pronounced to be executed. And then we're going to meet the other side of this, Richard E. Grant's character, Redfern. And Redfern starts to get the sneaking suspicion that this motherfucker's up to something. And sure enough, a tornado breaks in the room. Turns out, Satan had some sudsy powers indeed. So, Redfern and the Warlock are flung 300 years from 1691 to 1988, the year of my birth. Blessed days. And what a miracle of travel by satanic powers, only to be dropped at the beginning of the 90s. And, I mean, if Satan had just thought about it for a second and taken him maybe 20, 30 years further, hell, he could have dropped him off here and we would have helped him. And also, here's a question for my D&D fans out there. Why did Satan include Redfern in the Warlock's teleport? I mean, according to the rules, that spell specifically states designated friendly willing targets are included. So how did Redfern get into the spell without being included in it? Like that's what Satan had in mind, almost. So after a really rough introduction and, hey, how you doing through the window, we find out that the Warlock speaks English. Yeah, he talks real pretty in this. Yeah, not something you want to hear upon waking up. One of the better lines in the movie. Meanwhile, after our hero S goes to work, the Warlock wakes up and decides, I'm feeling rather peckish. And after not having a decent meal in 3 centuries, he decides he's hungry enough to eat just about anything. So, bro goes to the kitchen and makes himself an omelet with a side of tongue. So, first things first, Warlock decides he needs to get a hold of Satan and get his ass in the group chat and find out, yo, where the hell you at? And what he's up to. So he goes and he meets a fortune teller that he tricks into, getting that motherfucker on the phone. Or Crystal. And he finds out That motherfucker Satan wants his Bible, the Grand Grimoire, which can make or unmake creation put back together. Now, how does it do this? Because it holds the true name of God, or the word uttered at the moment that Genesis Big Bang happened. Yeah, I know this is not the movie's strongest point, but it is a point. And as with everything in this world, and as always, there's a catch with every devil's deal. But the Warlock has a catch of his own. He wants to call Satan daddy. And, Satan's like, fuck it, if you can do it, deal. So, after setting his eyes on Satan's prize and beginning to look for this book, the Warlock ends up back at Cassandra's house because one of the pieces was there. And this Warlock just had to curse Cassandra with just a mummy rot hex until she gets her little bracelet back. So, and this is brutal. 20 years in a day. Oof. I would party hard for about a week. Ain't no way I'm chasing a Warlock. Meanwhile, Redfern needs to set up his ancient 1700s Tamagotchi to track the Warlock. And so he can see if it, check on it. Make sure it's okay. Got bad news for you, Redfern. Lemonhead, your Tamagotchi, he didn't survive the 300-year jump. Aww. So we learn witches and warlocks have one real weakness, and that's salt. And iron nails through the soles of their feet, but that is more just to fuck with them for fun. So with these eyes, the Warlock ends up getting 2 pieces of this book, and 2 pieces of this book end up doing some crazy Mortal Kombat type finisher shit now, okay? He can run super fast, he can fly, and he can throw fireballs. It even blocks getting stabbed at one point. After, the book and I would say a little unbaptized fat of a child, he does need that. And we see right there, the gas station attendant that they are talking to is in fact Robert Paulson. Yeah, Pinky in the brain, and Yakko Warner. Yeah, that Rob Paulson. Sitting there working a gas station in the middle of nowhere, telling a rather brutal story about a kid getting killed by a coyote. Except it wasn't no coyote. So, let's lay out what the movie says are the signs of a witch. Cream that spoils by day, blue flames, a horse that sweats in the morning, bread that browns but doesn't rise, an unopened hatch you didn't open. Random ass rules are random as fuck. Turns out, though, Giles went to the grave clutching the last set of pages, so we think they're safe, right? Wrong. Turns out the idiots forgot to bury him in the holy part of his cemetery. What? Yeah, you'd think they were safe, but no. So, we end up having a final battle with the Warlock in movie 1. In the middle of a graveyard by the Boston Harbor. And even if old Julian wasn't deathly allergic to salt, getting double-barreled by 2 syringes of bay water is probably still lethal to everyone. Same with air for that matter. Pop 2 syringes of air in someone's neck and they're probably gonna die. Air embolism's a bitch. So, we got the most evil Bible ever written by Satan himself, buried in America's largest salt flats, which the movie falsely claims is the world's largest salt flats, but if you go looking on the internet, you find out that's not true. It doesn't matter. It's a large salt flat. I went and looked up how big it was. It is approximately 40 square miles. So yeah, I think that's enough salt. I think that's gonna be enough salt. That should fix this, at least for now. And I gotta say, a lot of the commentary I've seen online about this movie is that once you've seen 2, it sort of makes this one irrelevant, because 1 and 2 have basically the same plot line. I disagree. I think this movie has a unique charm. It has a unique sort of down-to-earthness that the second movie sort of throws away. And the consequences of this movie are not unfelt. Because in the first movie, he is just a warlock. But as soon as we get to movie 2, he is not just a warlock anymore. He is the son of Satan. Why? Because they made a deal in the first movie. Remember, he called Zamiel on the phone, aka Satan. He said, hey, if I put the book together, it wasn't if I get to use it, it's should I put the book together. I want to be the guy. I want to be your number one guy. And what Satan say? Sure. We all know it's very different between getting your cake and getting to eat it. You can have had it in your hand and never put it in your face. So he did fulfill the goals of Satan. He did put the Grand Grimoire back together. He was that cunning witch. So he is the son of Satan in the second Warlock film that we're fixing to go right into. But he did not get to unmake creation because, well, he was defeated. That said, we don't care. He still calls Satan Pappy. Daddy. Okay? So, as we begin this movie, we accept that Satan has honored his deal, and that the Warlock is officially Satan's special boy, like little Nicky. But since he got firecrackered with salt water and the Bible got buried in 40 square miles of the Bonneville salt flats, he's going to need to be reborn. Now, as it turns out, there's a special time that he's got to wait on for this to happen. It's always an eclipse, isn't it? It's always an eclipse. An apocalypse, if you will. But there are these people called the Druids, and they have these special stones that sort of work like the Power Rangers for controlling whether Satan gets to come out or not, and whether the world's covered in darkness or not. Luckily for the Warlock and Satan, though, half of the stones and the Druids are half the stones are stolen and half the Druids are killed by Christians, according to the movie. And I know it never clearly states who this group is, but if you go looking up information on the movie and you get to the synopsis or information on it, these guys are crusaders or Christians. And you know how this goes. The Druid Order is scattered, and so are the stones. So now, as a new eclipse comes along in, say, 500-600 years, there will be no new set of anything to stop him from being born this time. And I know some of you are going to say it when you start watching this movie. It is very Lord of the Rings at 5 o'clock and the Cult of Satan at 5:30. It is going to take you for a bit of a loop. So just stick with it. You have not started the wrong film, I promise. And then we cut to what is probably the hardest thing about this movie to watch. The romance of a young boy and a young girl who can't pull off Shakespeare, but are supposed to be the next generation of druids. But they can't seem to focus on anything but each other and doing the nanky-bakey, hanky-panky, spanky-manky. So, they don't understand they have Jedi powers and wizard abilities yet. Guys, the lore on this one goes places. We get a magic dagger made from the Holy Grail and everything. So, we get the next eclipse. So, new eclipse, who dis? And an absolutely awful dinner ruined by quite the unexpected delivery. The conception wasn't quite immaculate, but the birth was also very unexpected. Aww, Mama won't play with her new little baby. Probably because he's a very naked man, baby, with his very gooey naked bean out. Aww, poor baby. But bad mama. Be careful of this one, it's quite wet. But baby does like her necklace. That's one down, kids. 5 more to go. And kids, they just take everything from you, don't they? First they kill you and they hollow you out. Then they cut your flesh up and use it to make a map so they can go antiquing, vacationing, and shopping for expensive jewelry. Typical modern kid. And I gotta say, that's going to be one hell of a taxi fare from New York. And it's going way west of Chicago. Aw, but he gets to Chicago, and Hector, his driver, doesn't make it. Man, Hector was one hell of a driver. Pulled a non-stop all the way. They don't make him like Hector anymore, but he was falling apart. Meanwhile, Chicago fashion mogul takes a high-rise swan dive while singing "I Believe I Can Fly." As the finale of her new show, the fashion community was floored and concerned. Now several other artists in the community are considering trying to one-up her and might even try dying for their art in even grander ways. Warlock says always check your fine print of every deal you sign. Offer expires on signing. Jewel number 2 down, 4 to go. Meanwhile, the druids are thinking, hey, let me take my tiny little dagger and go and try and get in his way a little bit and slow him down, quote unquote. Yeah, that's hilarious. That's funny. You'd be better off staying with your buddies and playing with Frank's leaves. Which, by the way, I'm surprised they didn't actually believe in, because those things worked. 420 blaze it. And I gotta say, it's one hell of an initiation ritual to become a druid. Welcome to the organization. Bam! Bam! Can't imagine what happened to the rest of your recruitment and why you haven't had any members show up in a really long time. Can you imagine what happens if you get that wrong? Oh my god, they killed Kenny. They're bastards. Oh damn, I don't think Steve was actually supposed to be a druid. What? Why? I think he's supposed to come back at some point, right? Right? Ah, shit. They killed Steve. So, we get the scope of everything laid out for us by Kenny's dad. We have a lunar eclipse, 6 days, and then a solar eclipse. Can't God just get a vacation for 1 week without the end of the world happening? The druids better find the other stones and train up their new druid recruits in time. But, as we know, there's likely only 2 stones left that they might even go looking for. Meanwhile, the Warlock takes a wrong turn in Albuquerque and gets jacked the fuck up on that good juju kush Frank has. But the Warlock is at a gas station, so he just has the gas station guy fill up his tank again and gets himself a new ride in the meantime. Man, this is one of those, worth the ticket. This sequence, this scene right here is worth every penny. Meanwhile, Kenny finds out he isn't just any druid, but a druid warrior. So he'll be training to fight the son of Satan. And he can't even get over on the neighborhood bully. So his training's only going to be 10 times harder because, of course it is. And they only have 4 days left to prepare. Stakes, pressure, nothing wrong there. Frank, though, is gonna go find a nice quiet spot to die. I don't blame you, Frank. Oh, but the Warlock has to pay a visit to a house of wonder for yet another one of the stones. But the owner of the stone needs time to reflect on what it means to him and his life. Should have taken his time and been very patient. And I gotta say, this is one of my favorite scenes. Getting trapped on the dark side of the mirror. Meanwhile, Sam, Kenny's girlfriend, not girlfriend, is freaking out. And, because she's having dreams, and she's seeing Kenny in them, and it's raining blood, and she already knows about this prophecy, because there has to be 2, and she's it. Meanwhile, her dad's like, no fucking way in hell am I letting any daughter of mine go off to be a wizard. If you notice, this guy is a Glover. I think this is the grandfather Glover. Not the dad, not the son, not John or Crispin, but the old Glover. Meanwhile, Ethan, the spare druid who went off to get in the Warlock's way, yeah, that guy, he does end up finding the Warlock with his little roach compass, and he does get in his way for a moment. But he forgot he's not the warrior, and I don't care whether you have a knife made out of metal from the Holy Grail. He got enveloped. The inside of that elevator looked like something out of a Clive Barker movie. I mean, it's brutal by Terrifier standards, okay? That's one of those shots that I wish more people had seen. Meanwhile, the Warlock meets with a rare art dealer and offers him a rare piece of art, like a Picasso, in exchange for stone number 4. This scene is quite the treat and very fun after the more gruesome kill in the elevator. Now we're only left with 2 more stones. And the druids actually have these, unlike the knife they were supposed to have. First, Kenny had to die, now it's Sam's turn. And I just gotta say this, Sam ain't no punk bitch. She takes herself out because her dad is a pussy-ass bitch. Sam is a straight gangster for that, and I gotta say, she's straight gangster for rocking Kenny's ass, too. Meanwhile, the Warlock's map is getting a little dry, so he needs to pick up a hitchhiker to get it wet again. Yeah, this is my favorite scene in the whole film. Oh, my hair is just a mess. I can't see it in this little old mirror. Here, see for yourself. Hilarious. Absolutely magical. Meanwhile, he's not that far now. And this is pretty much the point where we round out the finale of the film, as it's the Druids versus the Son of Satan for the finale of the film. And it is one off-the-wall bonanza of pure adrenaline, non-stop action, as only the 90s could produce. A woman is crucified, a flying baseball, there's a wizard battle, a store is exploded, there's a gun duel, there's a imaginary gun duel and a real gun duel. The imaginary gun duel wins. There's a motorcycle race, there's another wizard battle in a forest this time around a Stonehenge. There's a magic battle with the second warrior involving a truck in the Stonehenge in the forest. And then we have to solve a puzzle because we end up with a problem. Because one of the stones in the 6 will react when hit with bright light. But they will be in the middle of a solar eclipse. So they're left wondering, how do you get light during a solar eclipse? Aha, I know, using the power of the Ford F-150. America always beats Satan every time. I still wanted one of them to cast Fireball in the end, but, they collect up all the Druid stones and the Druids are refounded. Well, almost all of them but the Birthstone. I think if there was ever a movie series that could do with a remake, reboot, do what you want with it almost, it's this one. Because there's so much from this series that you see in other films. Dark City, Tombstone, Lord of the Rings, Wishmaster. You see elements of this film and this series everywhere. And it had its impact in its time, but you never hear anything about it anymore. Which is quite disappointing, if I do say so myself. So, we at least have the possibility of the one evil Power Ranger, and of course he did run off with the Birthstone, so it can be him that comes back, but unfortunately, if it ever was, we know it wouldn't be Julian, because we lost him not too long ago. Rest well and be remembered, Mr. Sands. But I think that's going to do it around this campfire. This time, Dungeon Dwellers, Creeps, Ghouls, Mutant Fam, and all the rest of you who have joined me here in the dark for Spooktober movie review. I hope you'll leave a like. I hope you'll subscribe for more. We got 5 days left. Up next is Us and Nope, another Jordan Peele double feature. I don't know if I've done a double feature of his before, but we're doing a Jordan Peele double feature, and then on to our Christmas horror special. So stay tuned and make sure that you hit the bell so that you get notifications when I drop the new stuff. But night, sleep tight, and don't let the witches eat you in the night. Sweet dreams.